The second section of the training, we will be discussing co-regulation, what it means, and how you can teach your students to co-regulate. The first thing that I want to communicate about co-regulation is that it's important because it's one of the first steps to self-regulation. Co-regulation is defined as modeling and guiding your students to be in conscious control of their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So, employing those coping skills with them at first, keeping a calm demeanor. This is challenging, but it's so important. Engaging in deep breathing and using empathetic language. An example of this would be walking with a student to the calm corner and starting some deep breathing. It could be beginning to trace your finger across the figure 8 racetrack poster on the wall. Or use simple I Spy color books, pulling out a coloring book and some crayons to color alongside the student. I know you may be thinking, I don't have time to do that. Well, my question is, do you have time for a major meltdown in your classroom that could potentially become dangerous or need to result in the child or result in the child needing to leave the classroom? Probably not. Once a child has experienced, and I mean many, many times of this type of routine occurring, not just once, they will begin to trust the process. They'll begin pulling out that coloring book independently or walking over to a calm area when they begin to feel agitated. One of the first things that correcting student behavior is part of our work as educators. Yet often it can lead to escalation of student behaviors. As teachers, we can learn ways that we can lead students to actually hearing what it is that we're saying. For anything positive to emerge, both the adult and the young person, the student, needs to be in the executive center of our brains. I intentionally use the term carefronting rather than confronting. As teachers and administrators, we want to learn skills to break the chain of typical adult correction, which is nag, threaten, punish. When we nag, we are in our emotional center, our limbic system. Students who carry into our school toxic levels of stress enter our classrooms already in a persistent state of alarm. More often than not, we inadvertently escalate their behavior by not understanding the brain science behind the discipline. Adverse childhood and adverse community experiences change the brain. Your most difficult students, the ones that often are repeat offenders in school discipline procedures, are always in a persistent state of alarm. So what influences co-regulation? The influences on co-regulation are the same influences I discussed for self-regulation. Positive teacher-student relationships, effective classroom management practices that provide structure, teaching and coaching self-regulation skills, and making sure that you're teaching those skills explicitly. So when we co-regulate, we help students regulate appropriately. Because when students are in a fear state, they're incapable of learning. And in order for students to learn new information, they must first regulate. Co-regulation involves our ability to regulate another person's brain. It takes a calm brain to regulate another brain. As Dr. Bruce Perry suggests, the discipline chain goes like this: regulate, relate, then reason. So in practical terms, first, the adult needs to focus on the emotions driving the behavior rather than the behavior itself. For example, we need to focus on the anger rather than the swearing. The students having difficulties regulating their emotions, and they need a calm and soothing presence instead of anger and threats. In crisis, the brain is focusing almost entirely on perceived threat and the need for revenge or safety. The goal during this time is to de-escalate, not to punish or teach a lesson that a person flooded by emotions would be unable to understand in any rational way. Co-regulation is particularly challenging with students in crisis. It runs counter to the tit-for-tat inclination to hurt those who hurt us. Co-regulation requires recognition and safe management of one's counter-aggressive impulses. It's hard to provide support to someone who is fighting against it, but the willingness to absorb that rage of a furious student is a gift that can be given, modeling the self-restraint they so desperately need. We, the adults, must first drain off the emotions of the student. Co-regulation can take many forms. It typically involves warmth, a soothing tone of voice, communication that acknowledges the student's distress, supportive silence, and an invitation to reflective problem solving. Think about a mother tending to her young infant. The defining characteristic of effective co-regulation is that it is calming and designed to help the student manage overwhelming emotional arousal. So you've learned that it's important that we teach the skills explicitly. So what might you teach? That's always a question. You may need to teach waiting, which is patience, using patience, which is tolerance, staying focused and thinking hard, maintaining attention, doing it all by yourself, independence while working, sticking with something when it's hard, teaching persistence, trying different ways to solve a problem. That might include flexibility, problem solving. I hope you've been introduced to the escalation cycle or escalation curve. Looking at the cycle of escalation, what I want you to remember is that we teach skills when students are calm. We don't teach skills when the student is climbing the escalation curve. The higher they get on the escalation curve, the less rational thought that's involved, and oftentimes this applies to both the student and the adult. As I read the questions below, I want you to think about what do you do to co-regulate. So, what happens to your body and mind when a student is dysregulated? Has your behavior ever heightened the student's behavior? And what are some strategies you use in your classroom to help you stay regulated? Adults working with children must model self-regulation. So pay attention to your own feelings and reactions during stressful interactions with students. Pay attention to your own thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors of others. Use strategies to self-calm and respond effectively and compassionately. And when adults respond calmly, the student's feelings are less likely to escalate, and the student sees a model of healthy self-regulation that they may not see any other place. And we have to help each other. Have someone who is supportive to you that's in the school building. Remember, this is what we do to co-regulate with our students. Provide warm, nurturing, and secure, safe relationships. Provide support, coaching, and modeling to facilitate a student's ability to understand, express, and modulate their feelings, thoughts, and behavior. Teach and model self-regulation skills. And don't forget to monitor, prompt, and coach the use of those skills. Provide consistent structure and positive discipline. provide structure in the environment and predictability. I'm going to end the session with a quote from Dr. Bruce Perry. There is no more effective neurobiological intervention than a safe relationship.